Um, hey, I found out the other day. I think we have a mutual friend. I didn't realize. Brianna Richards.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, she's
she.
my wife's good friend, yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, she lives just about 2 hours from me. Probably like an
Mm-hmm.
hour 45 from me. She lives up in the valley.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
but yeah, I was my wife and I we went to school with her, and I saw her at a horse deal a couple weeks ago, and I was talking with her, and she's like, "Oh, I'd love to get back out and ride with this guy I rode with some uh, Jaton Lord." And I like kind of perked up. I was like, "I know that guy." She said, "How do you know that guy?" And I
Yeah.
was like, "Well, I don't really know him, but I know I'm going to talk to him here in a couple weeks, probably after the
Yeah.
futurity and everything." Yeah, so
Yeah.
just small world.
Yeah, it is really small. So.
Yeah,
And so you went
cool.
to school with her? You and your wife?
Yeah, yeah. She
Okay.
did the Brianna did like the 2 year ag program at Virginia Tech,
Uh-huh.
like the associates program, and then yeah, I met my wife there when I went to school. I actually went to school for engineering, but all of us all of us rode on like the hunt seat team there,
Okay.
so that's how we
Oh,
all kind of
gotcha.
knew each other. Yep.
So you guys are Aggies, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm my degree is actually in engineering. My minor was in ag econ, but um, yeah, we're definitely all like that land grant school.
Yeah.
We're not the doctors and lawyers school.
I gotcha. Cool.
Yeah, that's just like all
Cool, cool.
farmers and engineers that come out of tech mainly.
Very nice.
Yeah,
So,
cool.
and where are you at now?
I'm in Blacksburg, Virginia, which is
Okay.
actually where Virginia Tech is. Um, I
Okay.
run I run my horse business here with my wife's help, and my dad. I lease some land from my dad to run that, and then my dad and his brother they run a seed stock program here and run a bunch of bulls and have an annual bull sale and do that whole deal and everything.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. So you got a little
hmm
horse program there, like starting colts, or what do you do there?
Yeah, yeah. I've been starting colts, and then my wife, she's not full time. She works remote, as a remote kind of 9 to 5, and then she's like a hunter jumper trainer. So
Okay.
a lot of what I've been doing lately, honestly, is starting a lot of hunters and jumpers, and
Okay.
it actually is kind of a nice little program because it's like I'll get them going, and then in their 4-year-old year. That's usually when we start like to get them going over some bigger fences and stuff. And so she
Mhm.
kind of, I'll start them, and then they'll transition to her the next year, and that's worked out pretty well. We've kind of found a little niche in that.
Oh,
So
very cool. And how's that
yeah,
market doing? Is it doing pretty good? Pretty strong?
yeah, yeah. I mean, it
Okay.
seems like it. I'm by no means an expert. I feel like I'm just trying to claw claw out a little piece of it myself. Um, but we've had no problems we've had no problems selling horses or anything like that,
Mhm.
and it seems like the prices are just going up. So but I
Mm.
think that's horses everywhere.
Yeah,
uh,
I think so
yeah,
too.
the the hunters are a little different, I feel like, than like the western performance horses. And well, and I'll tell you one other thing. So I'm mainly colt starting right now, but next year I'm planning to start showing in like our local um, NRCHA club,
Oh, very
and
nice. Yeah.
yeah, so I'm trying to get into that some, and
Mhm.
because I would like to that like the cow horse thing on the East Coast is growing like crazy. Like five
Mhm.
years ago, no one even like I didn't even know what cow horse was, and now
Mhm.
everyone like it was all team ropers and cutting. That was like pretty
Yep.
much all the Western stuff here. Um, and now the cow horse thing is like what everyone's interested in, and the clubs are
Yeah.
growing, and it's been pretty cool to see.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a lot of fun, that cow horse.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
But the hunters are a little different because it's like it. I guess all of the industries are, but especially the hunters are so fueled by the amateur because
Mm-hmm.
it's not like even the jumpers or the cutting or the cow horse. Like there are people who are owners, and then like the owners send their horses to training, and the hunters just don't work like that. Like if a horse is in full training for being a hunter show horse, the end goal is, even if the trainer is showing it, the end goal is for the amateur to show it at like the really high money amateur classes, because the amateur classes have a lot more money in that world than the professional classes do.
Oh, huh.
Yeah. So
So the mainly the trainers they just get paid for like the training bills, and then maybe like hauling to horse shows and stuff like that, but like not
yeah.
really the purses and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they'll have things like derbies and stuff, but I feel like the money, it definitely works a lot different than like the Western world does,
Mm.
where there are these big purses, and like no one talks about lifetime earnings for horses or trainers in the hunter
Mm-hmm.
world. So every now and then they'll call them a derby, and those are be for professionals, but it really is kind of more of a street cred thing than anything.
For the
The
title.
real, yeah, for the title, but the real value is having like being the person who makes really good amateur horses, and then all your amateurs going and being successful.
I gotcha. Very
Yeah,
cool.
so it's kind of interesting, but it does mean if if you kind of like understand the colt starting thing and getting them gentle and doing all that, like you're kind of a big leg above a lot of those folks, because that's the same stuff where you see them lunge them for a million hours and all that
Mm.
stuff. Um, always giving them the latest drug or whatever, just to getting the horses really calm so they look right in the show ring.
I
So
gotcha.
if you know how to kind of just get one calm and relaxed anyway, people like that.
I gotcha. Very
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. But where are you right now? It looks like sunny and beautiful.
It is. We are in Buellton, California. It's about 40. It's outside of San Ynez, about 10, 15 minutes out of San Ynez, California, north of Santa Barbara, and I bet you can get to the ocean in probably 15 minutes from our house.
Oh, nice.
hmm So we
Yeah,
got a
I'm.
really nice weather here.
Yeah, no, it looks beautiful. I'm looking out my window, and it's like cold and wet and dark in Virginia right now. So
Oh yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah, your setting looks a lot more pleasant. Well,
yeah. I'm from Idaho originally, and I looked at the weather there, and it said it was snowing. So I was very
mm,
happy to be in 70-degree weather here in California.
yeah, I bet. I bet.
hmm
Our yeah, so I kind of I got a lot of things I want to talk to you about, but I think a lot of times the easiest way is just like start at the beginning and kind of go through um how where you started, which you just mentioned was Idaho, and what all you did to kind of get to where you're at now. So you were you were born. Did you grow up in Idaho too? I assume.
Um, I was born in Idaho, and then I think I was 2, and my dad took a job for Alex Madonna outside of San Luis Obispo, and then we moved here, I think for 4 years, just north of here, probably an hour, hour and a half, maybe. Um, my dad took care of the cattle and their horses, and then I believe I was 6, and we moved back to Idaho, and then so I grew up there in Idaho. So
Okay,
from 6 to whatever, yeah.
gotcha. So
So
Idaho
grew up
kind of
there in
shaped you.
Idaho. We are pretty much halfway between Boise and Sun Valley. So that's where we're at.
Okay.
So. hmm
And were you just like ranch kid, or like was your dad
Yeah,
working there in Idaho?
yeah. Dad had a ranch there that he took care of, um, and I think my dad and mom got divorced when I was like, I think I was 12 or something like that, and my mom moved over on the other side of Boise, and I kind of just bounced around between them, and then my mom moved again when I was 16. And I was a freshman in high school, I think, when she moved. And the school that I went to, I didn't really fit in with those kids, and that's when I probably really got into horses. Um, my grandpa was a really famous clinician. His name was Ray Hunt. So when I was about six, I think I was 15, 14, somewhere right around there, I started my first colt with him. Um,
Hmm.
and then for about every summer, I traveled around with him um, from when I was like 15, 16, probably every summer till I was 18. And then when I graduated high school, I'd travel with him pretty much full time. So went to went to Canada, every state west of the Mississippi. We went to all those southern states like Florida, Virginia, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, and then we went to Europe a couple times. Went there twice. To France and England. Went to Australia once with him, and yeah, traveled a lot doing the colt starting with him. So that
Cool.
was pretty much my background was colt starting. He'd have a pile of horses when the summer started, and they'd all be colts. And by the end of the summer, they were been hauled, and we did. He was just starting to lose his oxygen when I started traveling with him, so he did a lot less. He'd sit on a horse, but he'd do a lot less handling of him.
Hmm.
So I would somebody'd get bucked off, and then he'd say my name, and I'd get on him, and he was very amazing upbreeding. Uh, Getting to travel around him, like he could see stuff happening way before I could ever see it, and so he'd tell you or hint to you what was going to happen or give you a heads up, and then try to do what he said, you know. So and it was quite fun at that time in my life. I don't think. I mean, I still wouldn't change any of it. When you're that age, looking for excitement, and that colt starting was. I mean, I loved it. Loved getting on
Yeah.
those colts. We'd travel to each a new place every weekend and do a colt starting, and at least somebody would get bucked off, and then I'd get on there, and it was fun. I knew I was in trouble though, because he started laughing. I knew I knew I was probably gonna get bucked off. So I tried to stay away from that. But
That's funny. Well, that
yeah,
man, I feel like as a teenager, obviously you get around a lot of horses, which I'm sure was so incredibly beneficial. But man, talk about learning how to deal with the public at a young age too, right? Because you're just going from town to town trying to keep people alive, starting these cults, basically.
yeah. Well, I was pretty scared. I mean, I didn't mind being on a horse, but like I was pretty uncomfortable being in front of somebody, like talking to somebody or
Mm.
like that. So like I can remember times where we'd be at a colt starting, and they'd be all gathered around, and I'd be hiding in the back or something, hiding in where the horses are. And
Oh
I didn't
wow.
mind like being on one and like being in front of a crowd like on a horse, but I was pretty shy, um, like being around that environment, on the other side of it. But you're exactly right. Like I mean, I loved listening to Grandpa's stories. I mean, it was quite. I mean, and he knew how to deal with people. Like he could have been in any industry and have been
Mm.
very successful. Like his leadership. He'd tell you to do something, and like, I mean, for myself, like he'd tell me to do something, and I'd do anything in my power to do exactly what he said. You know.
Hmm.
Like if he said that you could jump over the moon, you believed you could jump over the moon. He was, I mean, I really really enjoyed that, that upbringing and being around that.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I'd love to hear more about that because I basically I think even if I'd gotten around it at a very early age, I was basically too young for when Ray was traveling the country. Um, I would have been like, I don't know, like 9 or 10 when he passed away. But I've heard a lot of people, especially a lot of people that I've learned from, talk about him, and everyone always really admires him, but they also, at least from what how I've interpreted, people were like, yeah, Ray was very I guess you'd say straight up. Like he wasn't a big sugar coated type of guy.
Mm-hmm.
And but obviously people still like gravitated toward him. It's not like he like did you feel that like he didn't feel like he had to sell himself in any way? He was just kind of like saying how things were and then people gravitated towards that, or like how would you describe the way he interacted with people?
Oh, I think if you ask him a question, I mean, you're going to get his direct opinion. Like he wasn't going to tell you like something false. He's very honest.
Mhm.
He was, straightforward. I think you knew what you got when you interacted with him. You know,
Mhm.
so I don't. I mean, to me, he was just grandpa. I wouldn't change him, or I wouldn't. I don't know. It's just the upbringing. I don't know. Yeah, pretty straightforward. Like if you ask him a question, he was gonna tell you. What his opinion
Mhm.
was, if it was. But I like that aspect of it.
Mhm.
I like knowing exactly where I stood. Like if he was the type of person too. Like if you let him down once, you probably weren't gonna get a second chance. Like. Uh,
Mm.
he was kind of, pretty darn straightforward, which, like I said,
Mhm.
I valued and liked that, that aspect of him, because I knew exactly where I stood. There was no, like, I see a lot of it where you get, like, with seeing people ride and watching people interact, like, they'll tell you something one day and then tell you something totally different the next, or how they ride a horse. They'll ride one day and then ride it totally different the next. And with him, it was pretty much the same all the time. So you knew exactly the consistency was there.
Mm. Mhm.
So,
Right.
but I don't
Yeah,
know if
and
that answered your question, but
no,
you
no,
know,
it
yeah,
no, it does.
yeah,
And that's the thing I feel like even though it might kind of seem coarse to people initially,
mm-hmm,
um people really value truth and integrity, right? The being the same all the time. And that's
mm-hmm.
kind of what you spoke to there is cuz then it's it's just like riding the horses, right? Like if you're consistent with them, they respond a lot better than if you're in a good mood
No,
one day and a bad
yeah.
mood the next day and all over the place, right?
Yeah, and I think one thing like about Grandpa too, it didn't matter if you were the king of England or a bum off the street. He was the same across the board, and it was the same with the horses too, because like we'd have horses from every type of from backyards to to rope horses to cow horses to cutting horses. Like we'd have them from all over the place, and he didn't treat them no
Mhm.
different either. They was he treated each horse pretty much the same. Will Rogers has a quote. I never met a man I didn't like. You know, um, and I kind of use that quote, but there's some I'd probably rather be around more than others. but
Yeah.
but I mean, with Grandpa, it didn't matter like who he was talking with. Like he was pretty much the same person, you know, which was pretty amazing, really.
Mhm.
And so,
Yeah. Yeah. Takes a pretty really in my eyes I feel like it takes quite a bit of discipline to be like
yeah,
that.
confidence. Yeah,
Mhm.
a lot of
Yeah.
confidence. Because I mean, I
Well, that's
can't. I
true
mean,
too. Yeah.
yeah, I don't really have that. I'll catch myself acting differently around, some person than other people.
Mhm.
But that's just who I am. The best advice Grandpa ever gave me was be yourself, and I can't be somebody else. I just gotta, and I know
Right.
that, and I just try to be myself, and so
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. Absolutely.
mm,
So so it's at 18 you're on the road full time with him then.
yeah. I think when I was, yeah, pretty much full time when I graduated high school, I would go to, because I always wanted to be a cowboy. So I would go to Nevada and go on the wagon. I did that for 2 years. Went on the Patan wagon, and then I think when I went first to Van Norman's for like 2 or 3 months or something, and then I went on the Patan Ranch for two seasons, branding calves down there.
Hmm.
So, and then I would, and when I wasn't, and then most of the time I was traveling with grandma and grandpa. The other, 9 months or 10 months of the year, traveling with grandma and grandpa, or going down there and trying to be a cowboy down there. So
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. So how long did that go on for?
for 3 years I did. I mean, from when I was about 18, 19, 20, 21. Yeah. So those 3 years doing that there.
Okay.
Maybe I was maybe 17, 18, 19. Yeah. So went down there, and I mean that was pretty fun cowboying down there. You'd sleep in a teepee and um, have a bedroll and get up early in the morning and go grab your horse. They'd bring the horses in, and you'd rope the horse that you're gonna ride for the day, and then just go brand calves all until about 12 o'clock, and then go back and have the rest of the afternoon off. That was a lot of fun. I don't know if I'd want to do it now, being that dirty and but staying in a
Yeah.
teepee for a month. But I
Yeah.
sure enjoyed it then. So that
No, no, where that was in
ruggedness.
Nevada?
That was in between um, Boise, or excuse me, Idaho, Nevada, and then it touched Oregon. That ranch, I believe it was
Okay.
80 miles across there. Was
Okay.
the size of that. So,
Okay.
when
Cool.
they, yeah.
Did you so obviously your your grandpa was kind of it seemed what I would imagine would be your guiding light with horses and everything. When you got the opportunity to work out there, um did you get to see like guys out there that you admired too that you like maybe it was just how they roped or how their horses were or anything like that? Did that kind of like spur you on just getting around? I assume there's probably some pretty good hands on something like that.
Oh yeah, I mean there was, at the clinics we didn't do a lot of roping, and I sure enjoyed roping. It was mainly just colt starting and stuff, um,
Hmm.
and a little bit of horsemanship. And then going out there and actually putting it to practical use, it was a lot of fun. A lot of great hands. I was around Billy Van Norman. That guy, I was around him when right before he passed, and that he was amazing to watch. Very quiet on a horse. Um, very like could get his stuff done. Made it look very easy. Had one operating right, and then when I went to the bigger outfits, it was done a lot different because it was more of a ranch type atmosphere, a lot more
Hmm.
people coming in and out, and the roping, that was a big you know change. And like when I first went out there, I used the Riata that whole summer, because I wanted to be a true vaquero,
Yeah.
that type of deal, and used a little bigger loop, and did that whole deal. And second year I went out there, um, I used the nylon and used the loop about about the size, putting your hands together,
Yeah.
being a little more productive and a little faster, and just getting things done a little bit more, you know, uh, easy, smooth, and stuff like that.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
so
More on the practical side, less on the aesthetics of it all.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, I did it, and I was glad I did it, because that was kind of a goal of mine to be a be that type of tradition. But the
Hmm.
next year was all practical,
Yeah.
trying to just get your job done and making
Yeah.
things
So
just a little smoother.
so that was at like the same place or a different place that
Same
you came
place.
back to? Okay.
Yep,
So
I
what
came back 2 seasons. Yeah.
okay. Yeah, I feel like I feel like there's a lot of young men and I think I kind of went through the same thing. And not that I like wouldn't love to do something like that, but you kind of fall in love with like you said like the riata and the big loop and it's going to look like this and it's going to be awesome. And then it's not that you don't value that anymore, but it's like more things come into the picture like how productive are you? How smooth can everything be? How is this on the livestock, right? And it I feel like a lot of people maybe go through that growth,
Mhm.
um, if you want to call it that. So can you talk about that a little bit? Was it like were you just watching other guys and that's what made you make that decision, or what
Well,
made the transition happen for you?
oh gosh, I don't. I think just becoming myself more. Um,
Hmm.
like I grew up on that Ernie Morris, that vaquero style upbringing, and like to me that was it's more of a romantic, like fell in love with that. But then when you're actually, doing it day in and day out, it's more, like, all right, let's, the kind of the romance goes out of it just a little bit, and it's more about like efficiency and you know getting not. I mean, you can still. I mean, it can still be. To me, like this is getting off subject a little bit, but to me, the science of writing is staying on one, and the art form is making it look good. Um, and to me,
Sure.
that art form, like I still strive for that, but it's more. Oh, it's maybe more practical, maybe just it's grown into where it's at now. Where it's like I see a lot like when I was up in Idaho, I'd see somebody that was in that they'd have a riata or they'd be that buckaroo style, and I mean it wasn't very practical. Like it wasn't like as handy. I don't know exactly how you'd
Yeah.
say it.
Yeah.
But like I think it's got to be um, productive. I
Hmm.
don't know if that makes sense or not, but I see that. I mean, I don't know. I don't. That's a good question on. I just don't see it. It's just not as. How would you say it? It's not as. The romance kind of goes out when you miss the loop 5 or 6 times.
Yeah.
This just going up there and catching it. If it's making your day longer and it's not as
Yeah.
efficient, it's not
Yeah.
going to be as
Well,
good.
so so on this show, some of the people we interview are like saddle makers. We've had some pretty
Mhm.
famous saddle makers on here, and one of the debates they always have is like, is a saddle maker an artist, right? Or
Mhm.
or but then it's like, well, you make art, but other guys like they make saddles and they're like, oh, my saddle's a tool. And then I've heard other guys settle on the word, I'm not an artist, I'm a craftsman, because it's almost in the same vein. It's like it doesn't matter how pretty this saddle is if it doesn't do its job, you know.
Mhm.
And and so it's kind of like similar with the horse deal. Like I understand what you're trying to say, I think, and I also think it's really hard to quantify because it's almost like part of the art is in the productivity,
Mhm.
right? Like if you just worry about making it look really nice and having the big loop and you're doing the riata and everything's perfect, but no one wants to hire you on. It's like what like then you're not really doing the deal. You're kind of looking like it, but you're not really doing the deal. And so I get what you mean. Like it's like the science and the art are together, because you almost lose part of the art if you don't have the productivity behind it.
Yeah, and I do think it's different times too. Like I think
Yeah.
back in the day, like you could be like a little bit like I think the horses were a lot tougher and a lot harder to get around. I think the cattle were a lot tougher and hard to be around. And I think like that approach of going a little slower, being a little bit more, I think it was way more productive in that style. And now like those horses, I mean, they're just, I mean, like when Grandpa was growing up, he said that, or in that time, he said if you couldn't ride them, you bred them. And
Yeah.
now it's, I mean, shoot the thank you. Um, the horses now, I mean, it's amazing. Like, shoot, I imagine there's a few of them you can teach to play chess.
Yeah.
And like you can like go a lot faster. Like when I can remember growing up and watching the team roping, and it was like, I mean, it wasn't very much fun to watch. Like the horses weren't very good broke. I mean, the nosers were up. That they didn't have a tie down on. I mean, it's terrible. And now, like, gosh darn, there's so much. Those team ropings, the fraternity, we just went down there in Southwest fraternity. They had a rope horse fraternity, and like that's almost funner to watch than the cow horse.
Yeah.
Watching those horses operate. And I just think the style, I think the horses have changed a lot of how that era, and how we are today versus how we were back then. I don't think a lot of the tactics now would probably work on those horses then. Probably the tactics then probably wouldn't work on the horses now. But I mean,
Interesting.
at that time period, I think that Vaquero, like, I mean, that was, I mean, watching it. I mean, watching the evolution of it, I think that was
Yeah.
ahead of its time a little bit, but now it's behind the times a little bit too now. If that makes sense to you.
No, it does. It does. Well, and I mean, there's a whole other, there are darn sure like still big ranches out there, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
But 150 years ago, where it's like there's no fences anywhere,
Yeah.
right? There's no. It's like you said, the cattle alone, and I agree with you about the horses too. But the cattle alone, it's like we get around these cows. It's in our best interest to go slow and make the most of the fact that we have gotten around these cows,
Mm-hmm.
because otherwise this might be the one chance we get. So, yeah, I totally agree with you where you might be in a situation where it is more productive than to go as slow as possible. And I personally, like, something I love, like I love just hanging out and talking to guys who are really really handy just about stockmanship and handling the cattle and different breeds, and like I could go on and talk about that stuff a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I I I love that stuff. My dad kind of raised me to around people like Bud Williams and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, but I understand what you're saying 100%, because I mean I can tell you right now, um, like the cattle we predominantly have in Virginia are completely different from like most of the cattle in Arizona, right? And
Yeah.
handle different and behave different and all this stuff. I mean, so and that's why people, like, if you did the same stuff there you did here, it would never work. And if you did the same
Yeah.
stuff they do
Exactly.
there to the cows here, you wouldn't get anything done either. So
Mm-hmm.
you kind of have to fit your context a little bit.
Environment.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So you've gone, you're honestly, like, I feel like you've checked a lot of boxes, like being a young man, because you traveled with Grandpa Ray a bunch, gotten to climb on a bunch of colts, gotten to go and cowboy and do the whole deal. Um, do you? So you said it was about 4 years you were on the road with him.
Yeah, I'd say for the 4 years I was in high school, and then probably 2 or 3 years after high school did
Okay.
that. Uh,
Cool. Where'd you go
and
from there?
then So then I had a full ride scholarship to Dillon, Montana to do the Colt Starting program. I think I was like 19, 20.
Okay.
Uh, and I just came off the wagon. And I always was intrigued with cow horse. Like I always, well, Grandpa did it, so I figured that'd be the next, thing I'd do.
Hmm.
Um, and so I
Did he talk about that much with you, or did like expose you to cow horse, or how did you get kind of how did you get that bug in your ear?
Well, I knew he did it, and he would always have his horses. There'd be very. We didn't do a lot of cow work clinics. We did some, but not. I mean, like not a lot of them. I mean,
Hmm.
he would. I wish I would have my experience. I mean, the cow horse, it's a little like the colt starting. It was easy to get your excitement and get going, but like the cow work around him. I wish I could. I think I'd probably pick up a lot more now than when I picked up then.
Sure.
Like he described stuff and like but it was probably way over my head. Like he had the colt starting in the horses probably down to a science, like
Hmm.
on explaining things, and I think that like I didn't pick as much up from him on that side. But I do.
Sure.
I mean, he did, and I don't necessarily think it was him. It was just where I was at in my life,
Hmm.
um, where I was at, and he'd talk about it like he had a horse named Hondu that he won the Cow Palace on in 1961, and I actually have the bit that he won. Um, and he went to the first snap whip fraternity, which was I think in what year was that? It was in
Like 71 or something, somewhere around there.
72, yeah, something like that, and it was in Santa Rosa. Um, um, I mean, it was interesting moving here to Buellton. They have a event here, and there's a gentleman here, and his name's Tyke Mindy, and he showed at the first snap fit fraternity too. I think he was like third or fourth, and then he was the first non-pro fraternity champion. And he said he remembered Grandpa showing up there, and him and Marvel came from Nevada. They were both living in Nevada when they came up to it, and he said that Ray got on his 3-year-old, and first thing they're all worried because they had to mouth them, to make sure they're three, because they're
Yeah.
Nevada ran, and like that. I
Yeah.
mean, they didn't have papers or anything, uh,
Yeah.
and mouth them, make sure they're three. I think that was part of the deal. Like all those guys, they mouthed them, and then Tiggy said he got on his horse. Everybody was sitting around there, and Ray got on his horse, and it started bucking right off the bat, and everybody was like, "Oh, look at this guy!" And Tiggy said he laughed because not only Ray was probably the only one that could ride that horse, but then he went out there and showed it, and he said like he had some bobble, like Grandpa, he'd always like overspin or something like that. He'd in the rain, and he'd always have a
Mhm.
bobble somewhere, and that kept him from being in a lot of the like probably being more successful there in the cow horse pen. But Ray didn't like in the cow horse, he didn't like the pressure that we put on him, and I think the pressure more or less like from this is just me being observant, and I could probably be totally wrong, but like say for example, if your horse was loping around there and he felt like if he wasn't right, he'd go ahead and lope another circle, instead of staying to the pattern. Or like say for example, if it wasn't turning around quite, he'd make another turnaround. So he'd do more what the horse needed in the moment instead of sticking to a pattern, if that makes sense
Sure.
to you. And
Yeah.
like there's a story that I heard, and I don't know how true this is, but I mean I'm 99% true sure this is true. But he started Greg Ward's horses, and he was pretty close friends with him. And Ray had two fillies that he was showing, and at that time, and so Greg made Ray a poncho that said, "Pull your hat down and win something." And he put the poncho on Ray's saddle horn, and he went out there and won. I think he won the rein work or something like that. And Greg said it was probably the best thing he did, because after that, Ray kind of quit showing after that, because he didn't like the pressure that he had to put on those horses
Yeah.
to do that. Um, and like, I mean, there's another story. Like, I mean, I think there was one. He went to Snap Bit 31 time, and never went down the fence on this horse, and then went out and won the fence work in the prelims. But he'd always he'd always have a bobble here or there to kind of keep him out of you know winning, or
Mm-hmm.
doing that. But I think too, like I said, I think he just didn't like that. The I think he liked the excitement of the colt starting way more. And at that time period, I think he felt that he owed it to the horse way more than going down that line of showing horses and whatnot. So I think that was probably why he
Yeah.
went down that line versus the cow horse deal.
Yeah. Well, um, so someone we've had on this podcast, Joe Walter,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember we were talking to Joe, and he was talking about when he started showing in Texas, and when he started showing, all the guys who were showing already, they said, "Oh, you'll never, you won't like horse showing." He said, "Why?" He's like, "Because you're too good a horse trainer." And they said, "There's a reason the engineer doesn't drive the race car, because you're going to be trying to show your
Hmm.
horse, and you're going to be like, oh, that doesn't feel quite right. Oh, that doesn't feel quite right, you know." And Joe said he felt that, right? And but obviously, if you're going to be a showman, you got to get over that
Go
a
through
little
that.
bit, yeah, and
Yep.
go through that. But anyway, he described something very similar to what you just said, where in the moment when you're showing, presenting, there's a difference between, I kind of look at it like the job we're doing right now
Hmm.
versus um, what is the perfect thing to, you know, get the horse where they need to be or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I mean, like going to Ray's clinic. I mean, like getting those colts ready. Like Grandpa was a big. He did not like the colt starting challenges. I'm for that too, because I mean, like I don't think that like in he was so trying to get that horse in a right place. Trying to
Mm-hmm.
get that horse where it felt good about what it did or what's it doing, where it felt centered. And I think he was a
Mm-hmm.
big believer in that. And like, you know, I think in the moment, like on a Colt starting deal, like I mean, you're not really going about it that way. And I don't mind like a challenge where you have 2 years to get a colt ready to go do it. I don't mind that
Right.
type of challenge, but like in a colt starting deal, like I just don't think that. I mean, you're going to be trying to. I mean, it's like sending your 3-year-old to some type of competition. And
Yeah.
I think I just don't. I think he was really in the trying to get the best deal for the horse. You know,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. Well, and I was going to save this for farther down the line, but we're kind of getting into it now. I do think it's funny because in the, I guess, I quote unquote horsemanship world that exists today, right? And the people that are in that, a lot of circles, like the word horse show is basically a dirty word, right?
Mhm.
That and I'm sure you're like familiar with this, but it's like the horse show people feel like the horsemanship people never get anything done, and the horsemanship people feel like the horse show people uh, aren't doing right by the horse or whatever their argument is. And I personally, I'm not anti horse show. I think in today's, like in the modern age, probably one of the best things for horses is the fact that they still have jobs to do.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, that's how I feel about it. But you know, fast forward to today, you are a cow horse trainer, and you just went to futurity and did all this stuff. Um, and you are Ray Hunt's grandson, and you traveled with him. And gosh, I mean, he even showed. So a lot of these people that kind of claim to be from the Tom Dorrance, Ray Hunt line of thinking, and then they're really anti horse show. I don't really, I don't necessarily agree with that, but I'd be curious to see where you stand and like what your thoughts are on the whole deal.
Um, I don't know. I haven't been very good. I'm gonna move over here
No
for a
worries.
second. Um, I like horse showing. Uh, I like the process of getting a horse um, where you can do it. I mean, to me, the horse, like going to a horse show, it's all right, because like there's lots of highs and lows and whatnot. But like, I love the process of training a horse and getting it to do all three events. To me, that's the real um, that's the challenge, and I love that challenge. I love the. I mean, to me, my favorite day is Monday, getting back out there and teaching those horses. Uh, and to me, I love the challenge. Every horse is different. Trying to teach them three different events. Um, like I love it. So to me, like that was one thing I always wanted to find my own truth. I didn't want to, because I mean, I remember growing up too, like, loping and horse showing, like it was kind of a bad word. And to me, when it was like, when I did get in that circle and start doing it, like I loved it. So to me, it was like, how can that be bad when I enjoy doing it? And like, the art of riding those horses is making it look pure and when those horses enjoy what they're doing, Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I try to, and I'm not great. I mean, you always try to leave room to improve, but like trying to get those horses where you go in the pen and they look bright and look happy to be there. To me, that's what the whole art form is. Not getting them forced or getting that other side of the horse show where you see it quite a bit is where you see it, horse not enjoying its job. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and to me, that's what I strive to do is get that horse. I mean, it might not be able to do the job as that one that's you know been forced to do it, but getting that horse where it. One of the things I try to look for is getting that horse where it wants to do the job more than you want. And to me, I really strive to get
Mm-hmm.
that horse where I can sit up there and not do nothing, and like that horse is like, you know, gosh, I've got to do it all. This guy doesn't even know how to read a cow. Uh, and that's what I love. I love sitting up there and enjoying the process, enjoying the teaching of the horse. And it's not like we chose three easy events either.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, a lot of variables in that defense work and the rein work. There's you got to teach them lope around there, change leads, slide, and spin around there, and it's a lot of stuff that you have to teach one to do by the time they're three. So, but I love it. I love getting up in the morning. I love coming out and riding horses. Teaching them that, and like I'll rope on a lot of mine just because I love to rope. So,
Mm-hmm. Cool.
but um, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, so to me, your question was, how do I justify, or how do I look at it? I imagine there's probably people from the horsemanship world that says, they don't like, like how my horses are, operating or doing more like the horse show stuff. And there's probably some of the guys at the horse shows that are like, well, that guy's too soft on him. He's just doing whatever the hell he wants. But to
Mm-hmm.
me, you got to find your own path and what's true to you. And I think that's what I
Yeah.
try to do anyways. So
Yeah. Well, I do know this much because like I mentioned, I'm getting into the cow horse hopefully next year. But I grew up showing a lot. My mom was a dressage trainer, and I grew
Hmm.
up like 3 day eventing, pony
Oh yeah.
club, all that deal. Um, so uh, my the majority of my childhood, I spent a lot of time at horse shows, and I'm not anti horse show by any means. Um, but it does. I mean, it makes you better, in my opinion. Like if you go about it in the right way of working with your horses, right, with the kind of like philosophy you've been talking about, and making them want to do it, because then it's not like you're just showing up to the arena and like, oh, today felt better, and then you're like, oh, a win. It's you can go, and there one thing I really like about it is there's some objectivity to it, where it's like, no, now this is better, and then hopefully you have like the education and the skill set to understand, I've gotten better and my horse still feels good about his job,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
um Whereas if you don't have that next show or that next goal, um you can I've seen it where people can end up just going out and they kind of spin their wheels a little bit.
Yes. And exactly. And I like going to those horse shows, and my I mean, it always feels good to win, but like I
Hmm.
enjoy the test and the challenge of getting that horse through a pattern, through the stuff, and to me that's what my goal is. And like, hey, if there's improvement every time I go show this horse, I mean that's what I'm looking for. I mean
Yeah.
that's the real, and keeping that horse happy with what it's doing, you know.
Hmm.
So I
Yeah.
mean that's the real art form behind it.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you listen to some of these really seasoned and very accomplished horsemen and showmen in any of the disciplines, they'll tell you, um, winning is nice. People like to win, and win this show or that show or whatever. But like the real winning is like you get to like get up in the morning and do this for a living, and like keep getting
Yep.
better, and it's like the real winning is just consistently getting to do it every day, and just
Mm-hmm.
growing, and I don't know that staying afloat's the right word, but like being able to, for lack of a better word, pull this off, where like you get to make a living on the back of a horse in 2024, right?
Yeah.
um that's like the real winning. And then if you just enjoy that and feel good about that, um I, I'm very young at this still, but I'd like to think if you can do that part, the success will come and go, and you'll kind of get yours at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, the way I look at it is we get to do all the fun cowboy jobs. I mean, we get to
Yeah.
ride a horse every day, work a cow, like the fun cowboy, the fun working a
Hmm.
cow, not, trying to trail one for, 10 miles. And, because that's what growing up on a ranch. And I mean, there's that, I mean, there's going to go check fence, going to go check water, feeding cows in the winter, that,
Yeah.
I mean, there's, that's enjoy. I mean, it's fun too, but this is the real fun stuff. I mean, where I say that's fun is because you get to spend all day outside. You get to work with animals. I mean, I couldn't think of a better lifestyle to do, but like what we do here with the horses, like in the cow horse, it's all the fun one. It's
Yeah.
the exciting jobs.
Hmm.
So and like yeah, I mean, it's to me, I wouldn't even know, like, if I had to do another job, I don't know if I'd be very good at it. But like I really enjoy what we do here.
Yeah. Cool. So you go to Idaho after cowboying and doing everything. So what? I guess this
Oh,
is
so
where you get into the cow horse, kind of back on in your early
yep.
20s.
So I think I was 19, 20. No, I think I might have been 18, somewhere around there. Um, I Annie Reynolds was living in Glens Ferry, and we're in Mount Home. It's probably 45 minutes away, and she needed a colt to be started. So I don't know how she got a hold of me, but so I go down there and start this colt, and it's a son of Gunnasmoke, and then it's out of one of her good mares. I think it's out of Shirley MacLaine or something like that. And I think I was only home for like 2 weeks before I had to go to the wagon or something. And
Hmm.
so I think I had like 5 or 6 rides on that colt, and I chase one down the fence and go down the fence on it, and like I don't even know what I'm doing. All I know, I'm just riding this colt. They kick one out, and I track it down the fence, and the cow turns, it turns, and um, and I had a blast. I mean, her horses, they were so. I mean, at that time in my life, like they were so fun to ride. They were, and she had them trained. Like she had a bunch. I think she let me ride more Magic Please that first time. I started this colt, and I remember getting on him. I think he was like 7. He tried to buck me off on the way down to the arena. He won the non-pro futurity. Uh, and then there I was starting a colt, going down the fence for the first time, on
Hmm.
it, and I just really enjoyed that. That was my first taste of the cow horse. Um, and so I went and worked on the wagon, and then she wanted to hire me, and I was like, well, I gotta go to the wagon, and then I've got college,
Hmm.
after that. But then she's like, well, I've got it. I think it was in June when I was going to get back, and she's like, well, would you like to go to the Derby? And that was in June in Paso Robles. And I said, yeah, I'll go to that. And that'd been my first time to go to a cow horse show. So I got back from the wagon, and I went up. I went to the cow horse show in Paso and saw my first cow horse, real going, being a part of it and whatnot. And I knew
Hmm.
after that there was no way I was going to college. So
Yeah.
I told my grandma and told Dylan, I said I'm not going up there. I'm going to stay right here and go to work for Annie. And Grandma, she wasn't very tickled with me. And Grandpa, he told her, he's like, well, this is Jaton's college now. Uh, and I remember, or I really
So he
think that was,
supported you.
he did. Yep.
Mm.
He thought that was the right thing for me to do at that time. And like looking back on it, man, that was a smart move by my end, because like I'd have been 19 and I'd been trying to, and like I could start a cult, like all the
Hmm.
experiences that I had, and like I could, but I was not prepared to go teach a bunch of another 18-year-olds how to start a cult,
Sure.
you
Yeah.
know. So I'm really glad that I took that path that I did. I mean, it would have been fun, I imagine. I'd have probably, you know, but so I worked for Annie for 3 years, and we had quite a bit of success there. She had a stud by the name of Very Smart Remedy that was just taken off when I went to work for. Um, and so I wrote a lot of those ones. Made the open finals. I think I was 20. Made the open finals to Snaffle Bit on one of her horses, and
Wow.
she won. I think she won the non-pro every year except for one. I was there. Um, and yeah, I loved it. I loved the job there. So the first year I worked to work for, I went to work for her in June, and not that November, but the following November, I think she let me have 3 days off that whole entire time when I was there. Um, and I loved it. Like I loved that job so much. I liked, starting the Colts, and just seeing every day progression of them. Um, and God, it was just, I mean, what I was born to do.
Hmm.
Uh, so then when I left Annie's, I went to uh, Justin Wright. I went over to Justin Wright's. He was in San Juan Batista. I think I was there for 6 months or something. When I was there, we we did a little more partying than we probably did horse training. and, uh, and then after I left there, I went to there was a feedlot in Bakersfield, and I trained some horses out of there. Um, and then I got hired and I'll just like fast forward, to where I'm at here, if that's all right.
Yeah, however you want to explain it, man. I mean, we got
Okay.
time, so yeah,
And then
however
if
you
you
want
have
to
a
explain it.
question, you can just.
Yeah, well, let me ask you this because I've never, maybe it's just growing up where I did. When you say you're starting colts like at a feedlot, how does that how is that working
I was training
exactly?
horses there. I was training
Okay.
horses there at that feedlot. After I left
Okay.
Justin's, I had
Like
like.
horses for the public or like horses for the feedlot or like the feedlot was just
Okay.
your facility? I'm not
Oh,
sure.
so yeah, I'll get back to that. So after I left Justin's, there was a feedlot there in Bakersfield, and they had a lot of Mexican cattle.
Okay.
They had there, and they had a cutting pen and a cow horse pen there, and they would have shows on the weekends or like on at once a month. And so
I
they
see.
had the facility, and so I just went in there and rented stalls and then
I
trained.
gotcha.
I think at that time I had like 4 horses that I was training, two of mine, and then maybe one outside horse. Um, and
Nice.
and that wasn't very very smart. And when I went down there, I met Doug Williamson and went. I don't think I worked for. I don't like. I was around him. I think around him right then, and then I went to work for um, Gardeners in Kansas, and that didn't last very long. Um, and then I came back and worked for Doug Williamson in Bakersfield. Went worked for him for I think about a year, and then um, at that time I met a gal in Arizona, Holly, and we married. I think in what year was that? 2012 or 13. And then when I got married to her, I moved to Arizona and lived there for 5 or 6 years. Went to the RO ranch. Um, they were wanting to do like horse program there,
Mhm.
and that didn't. They didn't. They didn't have the right tools that I thought they needed, and I don't think they were going to get it either. But I
What do you
worked for
mean
that
by
ranch.
tools? Like the facility
Well,
or
like the facility, they weren't investing in the horses that I thought they needed to invest in
okay.
for their program. They were just the budget quite wasn't there, or I mean, I think it was, but I wasn't seeing any of it to enhance their horse
Gotcha.
program. You know, um,
Yeah.
and I was just pretty much a colt starter when I went there. Didn't get to show any horses or rope horses or anything. And then I went on my own when I was in Arizona and worked out of a place in Skull Valley outside of Prescott
Mhm.
for a few years and had a nice little business there. Trained a few horses. Nothing. Didn't really. I wasn't. I trained some for the snaffle bit, but they weren't the type of horses that weren't going to go mark. And be successful. Like they just weren't the quality that I needed.
Yeah.
Um, so, and then, um,
Well, let me interject there for a
mm-hmm,
second cuz I mean, it sounds like you're pretty young and you're like bouncing around more or less.
mm-hmm, yeah.
Like and I know you've in there were like brief times you worked for yourself. What can you talk about that decision to be working for someone else versus going out on your own and maybe you got the where you felt like you got the education to do that because that's a whole different deal than just training horses, right? It like running the business by yourself and at that time like if you're married, supporting that and being viable and everything. That to me I feel like that's a different skill set than just I can get the horses to do this or do that.
Gosh, that's a good question. So every time I went to work on my own, um, like I've always had enough horses to ride. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that I don't think that's really been the issue, and I think I've always done a good, good enough job. I mean, you've got to, you know, to train them for what they are. So I don't know, like they in my life it just worked out the way I think it should have. It just kind of fell into
Mm-hmm.
what it evolved into what I need to do next. Um, I think where I got looking back on your question, where I would get frustrated is I'd always want, like the horses that I was at Annie's or like when I was at Doug's, those type of
Mm-hmm.
horses is what I wanted, and
Yeah.
what I should have been looking at was more like that takes time to get, those type of customers
Sure.
to get those type of horses, and that was always and frustrating to me, and so that's probably why I bounced around probably in those 10 years,
Yeah. Because
because I wanted, like, I had such a fast upbringing and such a great upbringing, like I never knew how to be patient enough, I guess,
yeah,
to
yeah,
let
sort of a
to
like
let it be evolved.
sort
Yeah.
of a born on third base scenario,
Yes,
and you had
exactly.
to. Yeah, yeah. I get that. Um.
Yeah. So
Oh,
I
you
mean,
still there?
the aspects. Yep. Sorry about that.
No
Aspect
worries.
of when it was right to go on my own. I mean, that's to me it was like that's how it was probably going to go eventually, and like you just have to, when the right time sets up, you make that step. But like
Hmm.
I mean, I always had enough horses to ride, enough clientele. Like there's always been, somebody needed a colt started, or you know, go along there. I've never had to, beg somebody to send me a horse. Uh, and I'm
Yeah,
very lucky for that. That being said, I'll probably have to do that this winter, uh, but I mean, I've always been lucky enough that way. And then like on the training horses, on that business side of it, you're not going to get rich doing it. I mean, your business, if you're lucky, it's going to break even, and I knew that talking to people and everything, and there's other aspects, on the business side that you do to try to get ahead. But like the training of the horses and that, you're doing it for the love of it more or less than the
yeah.
than the financial reward.
Do you mind elaborating on those other aspects? Like, say someone, say a guy's like 19, 20 right now, and they've
Hmm.
got an end goal of having their business up and running. What do you feel like, 10 years from now? What do you feel like is what are those other aspects that kind of make you more viable economically? Cuz I agree with you to an extent. It depends on what you're doing and who your market is, but you've got to you got to do more than just ride horses, especially in the beginning, it seems like.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, we've always had. I never had like a place of my own, and
Mhm.
I think that would be a real step up. So if you've got that, I think you're in a good spot.
Mhm.
But I think like doing clinics, the clinics, they've always been very good to me. Um, Getting a group of people together, sharing information. The one thing I love about the clinics is like, it's you get like-minded people around you. Everybody's excited. Learn, you know, I've done the Legacy of Legends, and those are always good to me. And just being around that like-minded people, the
Mhm.
purists. I think it's always good to be around. I know I'm getting off subject, but the clinics is a good way. Just finding, like doing like play days, doing Selling horses is all, investing your time into one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's a little bit, a little scarier market that way, because something could happen. Um,
Yeah, you bet.
and then, um, you know, just more or less, instead of horse training, more people training. Um,
Yeah.
People training, um, that's probably going to be a little bit more financial rewarding than the horse training. So if you can
Mm-hmm.
communicate to them, trying to get them to be able to get them where they can work with their horses better. Um, I think that's what they're really looking for, getting that communication better. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
but I'd probably say that would probably be the couple things to do on that, on the other side of instead of horse training is
Yeah.
that is what I
Yeah,
found.
that makes sense. And the reason I ask a question like that is because I don't know. There's a lot of careers where it's very cut and dry. This is how you can go prepare for that career and learn to do almost everything you need like in that career. But as far as being a horse trainer, unless you like, it's not until you go work for somebody, or maybe you have like a parent or something that's a trainer or whatever it is, and it's not until you're in it, there's not like a book you can go buy and like, hey, go set up your horse training business, run it like this, do these other things to supplement your income. And I see a lot of people, they get into it and they're like, wait a second, how am I supposed to make any money? And again, it's not that you get into it for the money, but it's like, wait a second, how am I supposed to like keep going month to month, especially in the
Hmm.
beginning? And
Yeah, I mean it's very tough. I mean,
yeah,
because I mean, yeah, you might have 5 horses this month, you might have 10 horses next month, and then judging your time on that, but being able to, you gotta be really resilient, and
hmm,
it's a tough game, very very
yeah,
tough. You gotta,
yeah,
I mean, the feed's gonna happen in it, but when so this makes those victories even better. So
hmm. No,
yeah.
I agree with you. So you're in Arizona, um, you got married, and then you struck out on your own.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Struck out on my own there. Um, and like I said, on that aspect, I'd probably been safe being there, but I was frustrated that I wasn't quite getting the horses that I was at, at Annie's and Doug's, and so um, um, then I did about, my wife and I at the time we got a divorce. I think we were married for 4 or 5 years. Um, and I think I did clinics for about a year. Traveled all over the United States. Went back to West Virginia, Georgia,
Mm,
Pennsylvania. Did a pile of clinics that year. Traveled all over, and that was tough doing. Um, just because you had the planning involved for sort of something like that to go. And
mm-hmm.
mine was on a smaller type deal. And those clinics there probably spread out for about every 2 weeks, so I had to go, plan those trips, you know, accordingly, get them all planned out right. But I did that for a year, and then I went to, I think, what was I? Was I gonna? No, then Annie hired me to come up start some colts. So then I went to go up there. Um, Started some colts for her, and then I think that summer I did some more clinics and showed some horses. And I had a really nice. I saved up my money and I bought a really nice one-time mare, and um, made a couple finals on her. And then I went back to Annie's that winter to start some more colts for her. And then at that time, my wife, or my she wasn't my wife, but I met her. She's Australian, and she came over and she started some colts with me at Annie's, and then her and I got married. I think we got married in 6 months after we met.
Oh,
Um,
no kidding.
yeah. So, and a lot of it had to do with I have a friend. Do you know Jeremy Morris? I think he was on your
Yeah. Yeah,
podcast.
he's
Yep.
been on the
So
podcast. Yeah.
he told me when I told him when I was getting married, and he said, "Man, she'll do anything for her citizenship." And um, it was kind of we had to. I mean, we had to get married because of that. Like she was gonna get because she came over on a visa where it was 3 months, um, and so she overstayed her visa and she got back in. So she came. So she was here for 6 months, and she was gonna have to go back to Australia for 6 months. And I didn't really want to go to Australia for 6 months, and she didn't really want to go to Australia for 6 months. So we just went ahead and got married. And
Hmm.
God, we've been married 4 or 5 years now, maybe five. Since I think 2017, 17, 18, right in there. And and then we and then yeah, and then so we got married, and then we went out on our own. And in that time period, through these time periods, I think I'd go to Australia in the wintertime for 2 or 3 months, either for the Legacy of Legends or to go do clinics down there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
just because, I mean, they're in Idaho, the winters, you get winter there, and I'm like a bird. I got to fly south. Um, so I'd go down there, and so I had some, have some friends down there, and that's where my wife's from, anyways. And then so then we're in Idaho when the pandemic happened, um,
Mm-hmm.
and um, so we're kind of showing horses, helping my dad on the ranch. We didn't have a lot of show horses; they were mainly just Frankie's and mine. And we had one customer, and we didn't have an arena or anything up in Idaho. And that was so COVID happened, and then like we weren't going to be able to fly to Australia to go down there. So this lady contacted us down here in California, and we came down here and did a clinic, and then we went ahead and just stayed and started put up a shingle down here. I think that was about 3 years ago. So we've been here for 3 years, and I fell in love with the weather here. We have a bunch of friends here. Uh, just been one of those places where you just feel like you belong. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where we're at down here. Kind of went through a
Cool.
lot of stuff right there, but probably
Yeah.
scattered a little bit too.
Yeah.
So
So, it sounds obviously you're kind of bopping all over the place, but a theme is even if it's just your own horse, you're still trying to get in the show pen for the cow horse the whole
yep,
time.
trying to get in the show pen, the cow horse, trying to make a living, just trying to do. If somebody needed a clinic to happen, bounce over there. I'm kind of just all
Mm-hmm.
over the place, trying to stay afloat. For the last 3 years, I mean, this has probably been the most stable, working out of one place
Mm-hmm.
that I've been.
Yeah.
That's been very nice. Waking up in the morning and not having to go, you know, drive across country to go do a clinic somewhere. You can just stay here
Weather's nice
and go to work. Yeah, the
always.
weather's beautiful and the customers are amazing here. A lot of great horses. Yeah, so
Yeah.
we got about we got about 25 horses on the place. About 20 of them, we train, and
Mm.
so that's what we do now.
Are are they? Is it pretty much all like cow horse stuff now where you're at?
Sorry, cut out there.
Hey, I was just saying like now where you're set up, is it pretty much all cow horse stuff, or like, what kind of horses are you riding?
I'd say it's majority cow horse. We probably got, I'd say 80%. Actually, right now it's more like I think 100%. No, we got one that's not a cow horse, but majority of them is cow horses. Mainly all cow horses, and that's been fun to focus on.
Yeah.
So, and they're all, I mean, all of them are very enjoyable to ride. Said I love what we do, and I get up every morning just looking forward to what I got to ride today. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So was that the goal? I know you said you were just trying to stay afloat, but through all that was the end goal trying to have a cow horse barn like you have now, or did you even have an end goal in mind when you were, you know,
You
trying to get
know,
through those
I
tough years?
that's a good question. On those years, I always enjoy. I try to whatever I was doing, I tried to enjoy it as much as I can. Um, so where my thoughts were, I was just gonna kind of let things go and just see how they evolve.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wanted and like because every time I try to force something, it always goes awry. Um, so I told myself, like no matter what I do, like uh, I just want it to happen. And yes, I would probably say my goal was probably more cow horse, but like say for example, if the clinics would have took off, I'd have probably enjoyed doing that too and said, oh yeah, this is where I want to be.
Yeah.
But I do think the cow horse. I mean, it's more for me, and I do enjoy that. When I'm doing the clinics, it's more for somebody else. Um, but I mean, I enjoy both of them. I enjoy. Are you on there? Is it reloading?
Did I lose you? Oh, there
You
you
come
are.
back
Yep,
there.
you're back now. Yeah, you cut out.
Um,
You said the cow horse is more. So,
it's more for me.
mm-hmm.
Mo, the clinics is more for somebody else. Um, and like there's rewards on both sides. When you help somebody through a problem and they make connect the dots, that's very rewarding. When you're trying to help a horse, through a person problem, and see the breakthrough there, that's really rewarding. The cow horse, I mean, I get to do what I love every day, but you go to a show and you think you're prepared and you get your butt kicked. I mean, that's not
Yeah.
very much fun. But then you go to a show and do well. I mean, that's good too. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think the goal was to have a cow horse place, but I mean, I'd have been pretty tickled. I mean, I like all aspects of it, and
Hmm.
that's probably helped my dad. We helped my dad on the ranch for 2 years there. I love that too. If that would have worked out, that probably would have been a good place for me to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I just let it flow and just let it see how it wanted to be. And like
Sure.
and uh, that's probably why I didn't have success in either one of them more than the others, probably because I kept keeping my foot in everything in all three of them. So I probably
Yeah.
couldn't. I mean, not saying that I haven't had success, but like you know, been bouncing around so much instead of just staying focused on one.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this because I've heard some people give the take, and I don't know because I haven't tried to do this, but 20 years ago, um, and even earlier than that, like Ray was traveling the country doing clinics, and a bunch of guys were traveling the country doing clinics, right? And it was like there was like this horsemanship storm coming across the U.S. 20, 30 years ago. But now I've heard guys who maybe they've tried to do it or maybe they've just assessed their options. They're like, yeah, it would be really hard in today's day and age just with the information that's out there and how things are now being like a traveling clinician and just being on the road all the time. Um, and I mean, like you said, you've kind of dabbled in it all. Do you feel like it would be hard for a guy to make a living doing that if that was the only thing he was doing, or is it still
well,
possible?
I don't. I mean, anything's possible. I wasn't very good at it because I wasn't very good at self promoting. So I
Sure.
think if you had the right person that was self promote, doing it right and pure. Like I see some of I mean, well, they're successful at it, kind of doing a little bit. Um, but I think if you had the right type of, I mean, shoot, if you had somebody out there doing the clinics and having like a social media bid, deal with it, tied to it somehow, I could see
Mm-hmm.
that being successful.
Mm-hmm.
But like that's just something I'm not going to do
Sure.
for myself. So I think yes, it could be. I mean, gosh, all you have to do is just try something, couple things, and if it works, you're brilliant. If not, then probably not. But I could probably see somebody doing it. It wasn't going to work
Mm-hmm.
for me. Like I said, I wasn't. I'm not big into self promotion. Um, I don't like that type of deal. 20, 30 years ago, there wasn't a lot of, the Google wasn't out there, YouTube, that kind of stuff wasn't out there. So, that there was a void. So, that's when that horsemanship deal went crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then for like COVID, when that hit, the horsemanship really took a downturn. I think partially because of the clientele that would go to it. They're more of people looking for somebody to tell them what to do. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so they're more inclined to probably listen to what the government, told you what to, not go. Not
Mm-hmm.
saying I'm just stereotyping, it's
Yeah.
not. And then like the horse show deal like took off, had people stay at home. They're looking for something to do. Horse showing,
Mm-hmm.
Yellowstone came out,
Yeah.
bada bing,
That
bada
was
boom.
perfect storm.
Yeah, and that took off. But I think things go in cycles. It wouldn't surprise me, this horse show deal goes along there for, 10 years and people see, it can be harsh and that kind of stuff. And, I could see it flipping and going the other way a little bit. But I mean, I can't see the future. Um, so, um, but I could see somebody being successful out there trying to do it. If they had a different twist on, what their game plan was now versus what the, formula was 30 years ago. I could see it being successful now. Like
Yeah.
Buck, he's still traveling and still doing good.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it was like, when like after his movie came out, that documentary, and then his clinics just shot through the roof, or after
Mm-hmm.
the Horse Whisperer, but that's just the outside looking in. I could be totally wrong, but
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Well, I want to be respectful of your time and everything, but I did want to talk to you just kind of a little bit more about the state of your showing right now. Um, like you just went to the futurity, and sounds like you got a lot of cow horses. How are you feeling right now about um, just competing and how your horses feel and maybe what you've got in the barn?
oh
How are you feeling good about that compared to where you've been in the
um
past? Or
well, this year was a little bit of a struggle because I had a charity horse, and so I was gone for probably 2 3 months, showing that horse. Like I did this on this group here, and then I went to
hmm
Australia for 3 months, and then I came back here, and then I broke my leg. So then I was
mm,
out another 3 months. So the fraternity horses this year, they're pretty green, and I feel um, so there was about 8 months that they were, should have been rode, or they were getting rode, but they weren't,
wasn't you?
yeah, and not they probably had better education, but they felt green when I went in the show pen, and I felt like I was really a bit disappointed because they were two probably of the most talented 3-year-olds I've ever had. So I was a little
hmm
bit disappointed about where they were and how we ended up, you know. Um, but like I'm just thinking, well, shoot, I'm gonna have a lot of fun next year, on those. The
Yeah.
nice thing about the cow horse, you got their Derby years, and they got the world's greatest and whatnot.
hmm
But moving forward, I'm quite excited. I got a black horse that I'm gonna show in the world's greatest horseman. Showed him think I showed him there in 19. I think I ended up like 20th or something. The
Oh, cool.
and so I get to show him again this year. I'm really excited about him. And then like I got a really nice, roster of colts that I'm riding. And like they're all pleasurable to ride. They're all good to ride. This year we're staying home. We're not going traveling to Australia or anything. So there's a nice circuit
Mm,
here in California. Really looking forward to showing in that circuit, getting the flow going, getting some type of flow, and I just feel like everything's happening right, and it just takes time for it to happen, and just trying to
sure.
hit the right flow, and we got the right horses, we've got the right kind of customers to all our views are in line, and just hoping that we can
Hmm.
just coast on and see how it takes us, and not try to force anything, but just let stuff happen the way they're supposed to.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, I did
Mhm.
notice one thing because you were talking about, through this whole story, um, and I don't remember the gal's name, but she was in California and she was the really successful non-pro you worked for. Um,
Oh, Annie.
yeah, Annie.
Yep.
When you were because you mentioned you made the finals of the Futurity when you were working for her, right, on one of her
I
horses.
did. Yep.
Yeah, and man, it like it might seem obvious, but I feel like it's reinforced all the time. It's those good horses really make good trainers, right? When you have a good horse, it just it really like amplifies how easy it is to be successful. Not that that's what it's all about, but um I you did that at like a really young age, and then now it sounds like you're kind of building back up to at least
Yeah.
that quality, but this time it's on your own, so it's a little different.
Yeah, and I mean it takes time to mature. You can't bounce all over the place and have a nice clientele of people, or customers and whatnot.
Hmm.
And you got to be in the. I mean, what's that old saying? Location, location, location. That's always crucial. I mean, the cow horse, it was probably developed here in this valley that we're in,
Yeah.
right here in California. Um, so that's very helpful. But like, yeah, the horses. I mean, I remember talking to Bob Ingersoll. I stopped in there, and I don't know if, I mean, he's a heck of a hand. And he said the reason why he was so successful is because he had all the best horses. And like
Yeah.
talking to him, he said like when they first started, like he'd have those horses for 2 years, and most of the trainers only have them for 6 months. Going back in the day,
Hmm.
because like that was how much investment they could only put in those horses. And his clients, they could put 2 years investment in them. So his
Yeah.
horses were way farther along, and he
Sure.
had the clientele to go buy those better ones.
Hmm.
Um, and like I remember Boyd Rice, he told me one time, he said, what you got to do is figure out how to train the average ones, and then train the easy ones easy.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I mean, I enjoy, like, not saying the horses that I've had in the past didn't out, but like just getting them where they can do all three events and where you are presentable, and to me, that's the real challenge. And then when you
Hmm.
have that special horse, I mean, it's just good, it's easy. You got to have that one that, and I've been blessed to have a few of them,
Hmm.
make the certain the only finals I haven't made is the world's greatest. So we'll try to get that done this year. But and I mean I love the competition of it. The horses. I mean it's a great sport. Just don't get caught up in the highs and the lows. Just trying to keep it as average. Keeping it as smooth as possible. You
Yeah.
know. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, clearly you're a very laid back guy, it seems like, and I'm sure that pays dividends for you. One, being a competitor, and then two, working with horses for a living. Um,
Mhm.
just trying to, like you said, kind of keep your equilibrium not be on a roller coaster the whole time.
Yeah, and I mean it's tough. I mean, to me, I get disappointed when I don't do well for the customers more than anything, or the horses, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but like it's not a easy game. You know, there's a lot of, like I said, highs and lows, and just trying to
Hmm.
keep it portioned right. So, but it's
Yeah.
fun. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yeah. Awesome,
So
man. Well, that's cool. I really appreciate you making time to do this today because I'm sure with
yeah.
that many horses at the barn, you're a busy guy.
Well,
Um,
I was dragging my feet. The last podcast I did was pretty awful. So, and the interviewer, they were great, but I don't know. I listened to about 5 minutes of it. And I was like, oh God, that guy sounds like an idiot. So I
yeah.
don't know if this will probably won't get too many views on it, but
Yeah.
at least we did it, I guess.
Um, yeah, we're like over 100 episodes in right
Mhm.
now, and um, I think it took me maybe to episode like 30 or 40 before I could actually listen to myself talk and interview people and
Yeah.
stuff. I just couldn't stand it. So I
Uh huh.
couldn't stand my own voice so much. But um I guess the last thing, if people want to look you up, maybe send you a horse down the road or something like that, what's the best way to find you guys and your program and everything?
Oh, probably through like the Facebook, the Messenger, or something like that, or the email address. That'd probably be a good spot too. I think we have a
Gotcha.
website, Jaton Lord Horses. I think it is. Any of those
Cool.
three ways.
Cool, man. Well, so
Alright.
I guess the next big show will be the world's greatest for you then.
Well, we got the California Reined Cow Horse Trainer happening next week,
Oh,
so
okay.
I'm going to go to there.
Yeah.
And then World's Greatest there.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, best
Yeah.
of luck, man.
All right. Well, thank you, Joe. Are we going to see you there in February? Are you going to try to make it out?
I really hope so. I've been tracking plane tickets to Fort Worth. My wife and I just got married back in September.
Oh,
So
congratulations.
thank you. Yeah. So we're going on our honeymoon in December. First couple weeks of December, and we're just gonna see if we can hopefully spring a trip to Fort Worth after that. So
Oh,
I'm hoping
cool.
we can make it.
Oh, that'll be awesome. Well, my boy just came up here. He brought me a dinosaur. Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
might
Cool.
have to
Well,
might have to let you go.
no worries. No worries. Don't hang up just yet, but I'm gonna stop
Okay.
recording.